This is part 9 of A Wolf Amongst Lions by Kallypso. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoy, and subscribe for future stories. Please check the description for a full list of tags and the link to drop a kudos for the original author. With that out of the way, let's continue. Chapter 52, The Battle for the North Part 2. Arya could not take part in the fighting. Nearly everyone who cared about her well-being had made that clear at some point or another. Her mother, both of her brothers, Tywin, Jaime, they had all seen fit to remind her not to join the battle, just in case she happened to forget her still healing injuries. Of course, Arya wasn't a fool. She knew that if she tried to fight, she would only hurt herself further or get killed. But still, she felt a rush of battle lust as the gates of Winterfell creaked slowly open. Jaime and his men were hidden carefully in the trees, and none of them dared stir as their path revealed itself. Arya busied herself with counting. She counted the number of archers visible over the north gate. 12. Most of the archers were concentrated at the eastern side, closest to the battle. The Lannister men would have the element of surprise if they went through the northern gate. She counted the seconds too, the seconds it took for the gate to open. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then she held her breath as the riders burst from the keep. Ramsay was at their lead, spurring his horse at a full gallop to reach the battle. His riders followed behind him, oblivious to their surroundings or anyone near the keep. They were not expecting a counter-attack. They were focused on the task ahead of them, not the keep behind them. "Hold," Jaime whispered under his breath. "Wait." They waited until every rider had left the keep and was on their way toward the battle. Then Jaime snapped his fingers. His men sprang for their cover and ran at a dead sprint for the keep. At the very same moment, their archers rose and took aim at the men above the gate. They felled 8 with their first shots, leaving only 4 fumbling to knock arrows in their bows in time to shoot the sudden attackers. Arya watched as Jaime's men ducked and rolled under the gate before it closed. She counted how many made it in. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The last only barely made it under when the gate closed. A cry went up from inside the keep as at once Winterfell was thrown into chaos. With a second volley of arrows, their archers had removed all but one of the Bolton defenders from the wall. The last defender had ducked below to hide from the arrows, knowing he would be dead if he presented himself as a target again. The Lannister men who hadn't made it through the gate pressed along the outside, waiting for an opening. Arya pressed her left fist hard against the ground. 11 won't be enough to take the castle. "If they get the gate open again, it won't just be 11, Jaime said. Arya nodded once and held her breath again. She waited for the gate to creak, counting the seconds, feeling her heartbeat grow more painful as the time stretched on, and she listened to the clash of steel inside of her home. Then the gate began to open again. At once Arya felt the rush of relief and determination, followed by a rise of what she could only describe as bloodlust. Her vision blacked out. One moment she was staring at the gate and the next she was running for it. Strangely, she seemed to be running on all fours, a deep snarl rattling her whole body. She was not a girl anymore. She was a wolf, and ripped from the trees and shot past the open gate at once, thirsty for a taste of Bolton blood. She skidded across the mud, whipping her head around, looking for anyone wearing a Bolton symbol. As soon as she saw them, she leapt upon them, knocking them to the ground beneath her great weight and tearing their throats from their bodies. She killed one soldier and then scrambled to kill another as quickly as possible, and she counted the number that fell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Something sharp bit into her haunches, and she whirled around to snap at a terrified soldier. He stumbled back, only to have a sword driven through the back of the skull. Jaime had entered the courtyard, and he looked at her with a sort of bewilderment. Perhaps he has never seen a girl turn into a wolf before, Arya thought. Then again, she wasn't sure how she had turned into a wolf. Perhaps it was the warging, like Bran said. She and Nymeria became of one mind with a common goal. And that goal was to rip Boltons apart. The Bolton army was beginning to fall to pieces. As soon as the Lannisters had appeared on the field, their weakness had shown itself. But then Roose Bolton took a bolt beneath his armpit and toppled from his horse. Once Lannister men had taken him hostage, the northern rebels had no one left to lead them. It cut the head off of their rebellion. That was the favourable outcome, but unfortunately the bolt that toppled Roose had brought him to death's door. As Tywin looked down at his opponent, he could see already that the Lord of the Dreadfort did not have much longer to live. He was deathly pale and glassy-eyed, struggling to even stay on his knees. I suspected a trick from you, Roose Bolton muttered. You never were an honest man. No, Tywin said, so why didn't you forgo your plan? We had no choice, but to take a chance. This was our best opportunity. Pain weighed heavily on his words. And the battle is not over yet. It will be soon, and you know it. Tywin shifted on his horse. But while you still draw breath, you could end it. Tell your men to surrender. He looked down at his opponent coldly. Or better yet, give me the name of the traitor. Roose Bolton let out a hoarse laugh. Blood sprayed from his mouth. The arrow, it seemed, had punctured a lung. I don't think I'll do either of those things. You may subdue my men and my allies without my help. And as for the name, you deserve to discover it all on your own, Lord Tywin. I only regret that I won't be able to be there when you do. Tywin tightened his grip on the reins, but he did not show his anger other than that. It was no use questioning him further. Roose Bolton had made up his mind, and he could not torture an answer out of him. He would not live long enough for that. And if torture was necessary, his bastard son was always an option. He likely knew the name of the traitor as well. Take him away, Tywin said at last. Let him succumb to his wounds. The men who had retrieved Roose Bolton from the battlefield nodded and dragged him to his feet. The man could barely keep steady as they led him away. Tywin guessed he would have less than an hour left. Some of the northern traitors had begun to throw down their swords. One of his generals, Lord Catelyn, said, "Shall we accept their surrender?" "I highly doubt Robb Stark will let them live if you do," Tywin said. "But it is his home. The North should see him deal with his own traitors. It's the only way they will see him as strong." Lord Catelyn nodded. "Very well." Lord Tywin, a scout rode to meet them, his expression urgent. "You asked for me to watch the situation at Winterfell." "Yes, and your son's men have infiltrated the castle. The victor is unclear at this time, but the Boltons left Winterfell with few defenders." Tywin's brow furrowed. "That means Ramsay Bolton has brought riders to the field. Where are they?" A wild cry answered his question. He looked up to see riders breaking through the trees, headed toward him and the line of command. But they would not have such an easy time of it. Tywin was not a fool. He had kept many of his soldiers back in the woods in case the enemy tried to mount attack on his forces in the woods. At once his soldiers reformed a line in front of him, prepared to face the riders. Lord Catelyn galloped toward the men, shouting commands. "Hold steady, beat them back." Tywin backed his horse up a few steps, watching as the archers took their places, ready to defend. In a volley of arrows, they knocked several riders from their mounts and sent just as many horses squealing into the dirt. He looked for Ramsay Bolton among them. He did not know what the boy looked like, only that he greatly resembled his dying father, but he suspected he would be at the lead. There was no clear leader, though, and no face that spoke to being Roose Bolton's blood. Tywin's brow furrowed. This was a clumsy, desperate attack from the Boltons, especially since it required them leaving Winterfell undefended. If this was all they meant to do. Then Tywin heard a horse behind him, and the scrape of steel on steel. He looked back in time to see a lone rider charging him. There he is. Tywin was not a swordsman. He used to be a long time ago when he was a knight and not a lord, but what remained of his skills was rusted muscle memory. Ramsay was clearly not rusted as he charged him, and Tywin narrowly wheeled his horse around in time to avoid the blow. He raised his sword and blocked the second strike. For a moment, Ramsay Bolton paused, his eyes nearly glowing with malice. "If you had only turned a moment later," he muttered. "Sorry to disappoint you," Tywin replied flatly. Ramsay's mouth twisted into an awful grin. "That's all right, you can make up for it." He drew a small dagger with his left hand then. Tywin saw his move a second before it happened. He was aiming for the weak point in his armor under his arm. She shoved away from the blade, but not before Ramsay managed a deep cut in his side. Pain pulsed through him where the blade had bit, but it was a minor wound at worst. Nothing compared to the wound Roose Bolton had suffered. Still, it had thrown him off course, and Ramsay was quick to counter with another blow with his knife. Tywin narrowly backed his horse out of range. In a one-on-one fight he would not win against this man. He knew that already. But his soldiers had been distracted by the suicide charge of his riders. It was a better play than expected. He gripped his sword, preparing to block another blow. Then another rider joined the fight. One moment Ramsay was sitting on a horse beside Tywin. The next he was falling from his mount to avoid a sword, and Tywin looked up to see Robb Stark leaping from his horse to meet the bastard in the mud. That's the second time a Stark child has saved me, he thought. Ned Stark must be turning in his tomb. Robb saw red when he saw Ramsay. That he was attacking Lord Tywin was rather incidental. He only wanted Ramsay off his horse on the ground at his mercy. When his swing forced Ramsay to throw himself from his horse, Robb abandoned his mount too. He did not need it to fight Ramsay. He splashed down into a puddle of mud as Ramsay picked himself up, his teeth barred like a mangy dog. You are a dog, I am a wolf, Robb thought, turning his sword in his hand. Kind of you to come deal with me yourself, Lord Stark, Ramsay hissed. If I can't put Lord Tywin in the ground, I'm happy to put you there. Not if I put you there first, Robb growled. He struck out at Ramsay, but the bastard avoided him. He was quick. Though he did not wield a sword with as much grace and skill as any great knight, he had his speed on his side. He did not wear heavy armor which allowed him to be even faster, but that just meant he had more weak spots. Robb advanced on him, striking out several times in quick succession. Ramsay dodged many of the blows before trying to block the last. The strength of Robb's swing launched the sword from his hand. Ramsay spun away from the next jab and drew a knife, turning it in his hand with practiced ease. If he was average with a sword, he was an expert at a knife. Robb was forced to lean back to avoid a quick jab at his face. Swordsmen always neglect this little weapon, Ramsay grinned. It can't block your sword, no, but it can sneak through the gaps in your defences as well as any blade. He tilted his head to the side. And it's good for flaying. An image of Talys's body flashed through Robb's head then, an image of her flayed corpse hanging over Winterfell. Robb let out a snarling sound and lunged at Ramsay again, but his swing was wild. Ramsay twisted around him and struck out at his sword hand. He cut just deep enough at the wrist that Robb lost his grip on his sword. That was fine. He seized Ramsay's knife hand at the next stab and head-butted him as hard as he could. For a moment Robb's vision blacked out, but he did not stop moving. He threw Ramsay to the ground, drew back his fist and punched him in the face with all his might. Then again. Ramsay tried to raise his knife hand, but Robb seized the blade from him before he could use it, driving it into his left shoulder. He kept punching. He kept wailing on him over and over again just so he could see the blood spurt from his nose and mouth. If it had been left to him, he might have punched him to death. But in the midst of it, a hand grabbed his wrist and stopped him. Lord Stark, he's beaten, still yourself. Robb whirled to glare up at Tywin Lannister. He's not dead, so he's not beaten. Believe me, he will die, Tywin said, but his father is dead. He's the only one who can tell us about the traitor in the south who had designs on ruining your family. The old lion's gaze was steady and his voice was calm despite his injury. So keep him alive, for now. Robb blinked a few times as he considered the words, even in the midst of his bloodlust. They needed to know the name of the traitor, especially when they could be a further threat to the north. It would be ideal to keep Ramsay alive and torture the information out of him. That would be the kind of slow death he deserved. And he had promised Arya that he would try to bring him back alive. Slowly he stood and backed away from Ramsay. The bastard did not rise, though he was still conscious. The blows had clearly dazed him. Robb looked around and saw that quite a crowd had begun to form as he fought. Some northern soldiers prepared to step in, and some Lannister soldiers as well. Tywin ordered some of his men to seize and bind Ramsay so that he could be delivered back to Winterfell. Back to Winterfell, Robb repeated. Yes, we just received word, Tywin said. My son's men made it inside the castle. Odds are that they were successful in their venture. Robb exhaled, hardly daring to believe it. Roose Bolton was dead, Ramsay Bolton captured, and Winterfell might once again be theirs. It was almost over. The darkness of the crypt was beginning to drive Sansa mad. It had been well over a month since she had seen the sun, and she longed for it again. But she stayed put, no matter the temptation to breathe the fresh air. She stayed put to keep the children safe, all the while living in fear that they would be discovered. Then one morning or afternoon or evening, she couldn't tell the time any more, someone did enter the crypt. Brienne raised her sword and Shaggy Dog growled. At the end of the crypt there was a shadow, and it did not look like Maester Luwin. It looked like a soldier. Sansa tensed and drew the children closer to her. Shaggy Dog snapped at the air. It's all right, the shadow spoke gently. It's all right, Lady Brienne, it's me. Brienne lowered her sword slightly. Sir Jaime. Sansa's eyes widened. Jaime Lannister, what was he doing here if he was here then? Yes, Jaime took a few steps forward into the dim lantern light. His eyes rested on Sansa. So you were in the crypts, your brother said as much. Bran, Sansa murmured. Yes, Jaime said, it's all right, you can come out of the crypts now. The battle for the north is nearly at its end, and we've taken the castle back. Sansa hardly dared to believe it. Are you sure? I would not be standing here if we hadn't won, Jaime said. Sansa let out a relieved breath, standing slowly to her feet. Ned stood with her, tugging at her skirts. Aunt Sansa, do we finally get to leave? He asked. Yes, Ned, she whispered through her tears of relief. We do. Arya opened her eyes and found herself in the middle of the Winterfell courtyard, lying in a cart. She jolted into a sitting position, ignoring the pain of her wound slicing through her, and looked around. She looked around for flags, for soldiers. Who was here? The Starks, the Lannister, the Boltons. Her gaze settled on a man in a red Lannister cloak, dragging the body of a Bolton soldier to a larger pile. Another Lannister man walked along the ramparts. They seemed calm, collected. They would not be so calm if they had lost. Did we really win? She thought. Arya scrambled from the cart, gripping onto the side of it to steady herself. But before she could take another step, she found herself face to face with a wolf. Her wolf. Nymeria stood in front of her, looking deep into her eyes, the same way she had on that day so many years ago when Arya told her to run. She was so much larger now and fiercer, the kind of creature that could tear men to pieces, and yet she was the same wolf pup from her childhood. Hey girl, Arya whispered. She slowly reached out one gloved hand. It's been a while. Nymeria did not reply. For a moment she did not move either backwards or forwards. Arya feared she might turn and flee, leaving her alone again. But then her wolf stepped forward, nudging her hand with her nose. Arya shuddered and let her fingers slide through her fur. That's it, she murmured. We're all right now. To her right she heard her mother cry out in relief. She turned to see Sansa stepping cautiously out of the crypts. In her arms she held little Ben, and Lyanna and Ned walked behind her, clinging to her dress. In a moment Sansa had run into their mother's arms, embracing her tightly. Little Lyanna laughed and tugged at Catelyn's dress, and she scooped her up into an embrace. They were all well. They were okay. Sansa met Arya's eyes from across the courtyard and let out a laugh mixed with a sob. Arya smiled in return just as the tears began to fall. It seemed there was a tear for each emotion she felt. Exhaustion, relief, regret, hope, and so many shades in between. In the middle of the Winterfell courtyard, Arya sank to her knees beside her wolf and let the tears fall, relishing in her family's rare victory. After all this pain, they had won. Chapter 53, Aftermath. The bodies lay thick across the battlefield, turning the snow beneath them crimson. In the aftermath it was hard to tell which corpses belonged to northern loyalists and northern traitors. They were all men who had fought beside Robb at one time or another, then some had turned on him, others had fought with him, and now they all rotted on the battlefield. The traitors who had not died had surrendered or fled. Most of them would be dead soon as well. There were Lannister bodies scattered amongst the Northerners' Westerlanders who had given their blood for peace in the north. It would have been easy enough for Tywin to take Arya and return south at Roose's offering. He could have left the north to deal with its own rebellion, just as he had left Robb to deal with the Greyjoys. Whether for their lord's pride or politics or some other reason, the men of the West had stayed and fought and died. How time could change things. Not long ago Robb would have rejoiced to see Lannisters bleed. Now they bled as his allies. Tywin Lannister was bleeding too, but not to the death. Ramsay Bolton had managed a deep cut beneath his arm with a knife, and the man kept a red cloth pressed over the wound to stem the bleeding as he approached Robb on horseback. You should see to that, Robb commented. I will, Tywin said. I've had worse wounds, there's no need to worry. I'm not worrying, just stating a fact, Robb replied. Any word from your son? Yes, Winterfell is secure, and the Bolton traitors captured or killed. Robb nodded once, trying not to let relief show on his face, but there was doubt in his heart as well. No one had mentioned anything yet about his children, and Robb was too afraid to ask and find out they had been dead all along. Winterfell is open to you and your generals as well, Robb said. Until you are ready to leave, I expect your soldiers need rest before they make the journey home. The march through the Wolfswood is trying. Yes, they will rest, Tywin said, but we won't burden you for long before we march. Our tents are accommodations enough. There's no need for you to force courtesies. I'm not forcing courtesies. I am paying a debt, Robb said. If your men had not arrived on the battlefield, Roose Bolton would have overwhelmed us. By my recollection, you already paid that debt a short time ago, Tywin pointed out. That was right. Robb had inadvertently saved Tywin Lannister's life when he attacked Ramsay. He hadn't meant to, but he had all the same. I paid my debt to you, not to your other generals, he said at last. So Winterfell is open to you, I insist. Tywin inclined his head and did not argue further. With any luck, we can get a name from Ramsay Bolton before we march. I hope we can, Robb said flatly. Once we have the name, his miserable life will no longer be necessary. No, Tywin said, but don't be hasty. He does not deserve the mercy of a quick death. He won't have one, Robb vowed. A rider approached them then, and Robb turned to see Jaime Lannister on its back. He gave Robb a nod and cast a glance at his father's side. You're wounded. Only slightly, Tywin said. I'll have a maester see to it soon. You have my thanks, Sir Jaime, Robb said, for securing Winterfell in my absence. It was your sister's plan, Jaime said. If she could stand, I'm sure she would have led the charge herself, but all the same you're welcome. He shifted on his horse. Actually, I'm here because your sister sent me. She asked you return at once. Why is Arya all right? Robb asked. She's fine, she wasn't the sister who sent me. It was the Lady Sansa, Jaime said. Your children have been asking for you. Robb felt a shudder go through his body. My children. Gods above, could they truly be alive? Robb passed beneath the north gates of Winterfell, trying not to let the desperation show on his face. He knew that everyone was watching him, his followers, his enemies, his family. He tried to keep his head high and his expression controlled as he swung from horse. Already, the soldiers had begun the task of removing the bodies from the ramparts and covering them with cloth. Robb knew that Talisa was among them, but he could not look for her now. As he stepped into the courtyard, he looked around for a familiar face. He caught sight of his mother, who approached and rested a hand on her arm. Mother, where? He asked in a soft voice. There in the Godswood, Catelyn murmured. Go on, I'll oversee things here until you're done. Robb nodded and strode off toward the Godswood as quickly as he could without looking frantic. He passed through the gate and into the familiar woods of his childhood. Even at a distance, he caught a flash of red hair, Sansa's red hair. She was sitting by the pool with 2 children at her side and a baby in her arms, a baby who had grown a great deal since Robb had last seen him. He let out a ragged breath and Sansa back at him, a sad smile on her face. She leaned down to whisper something to the children. Ned and Lyanna turned then and locked onto him with their big, beautiful eyes. Their skin was pale from over a month in the crypt, but they were healthy and strong, and smiles split their faces as if they had never known the war at all. Father. His son and daughter scrambled toward him and Robb fell to his knees, catching them both up in his arms. He clung onto them tightly, trying to keep back his tears. Home, Lyanna rejoiced. You're home. I'm home, he murmured. I'll be home for some time now. I'm sorry I went away. Sansa stood and approached them, holding little Ben in her arms. Robb stood to receive him. Ah, you've grown so much, Ben. He pulled him into his arms. The baby reached out a hand, grasping at his nose. I'm sorry I was gone for so long. I'm so sorry. He looked up at Sansa. Thank you for protecting them. Sansa shook her head. Of course, I'm sorry that I couldn't. She trailed off, unable to find the words. Robb rested a hand on her upper arm. You have no blame for that, Sansa. Ned tugged on Robb's cloak. Father, Aunt Sansa says that Mother won't be coming home. A fresh wave of pain rolled over Robb. He looked from Ned to Sansa, who had a helpless expression her face. It was not easy explaining death to such young children. How could one really understand when someone they loved was alive 1 minute and dead the next? Why, Ned asked. Why did she leave us? Did we do something wrong? No, Robb said. No, you did nothing. She didn't want to leave you, believe me. She was taken away from us. He ruffled his son's hair. And if she could, she would fight her way back to you. She loved you all so much. Ned's eyes filled with tears. But I want to see her again, just one more time. Robb shook his head. He knew perfectly well that it was impossible to see her. The children would not be able to bear what she looked like now. I'm sorry, but you can't. He knelt again, drawing his eldest son close. I'm sorry, Ned. His boy clung to him and wept against his shoulder. Lyanna did not weep, for she did not seem to understand, and little Ben had likely already forgotten his mother's face, but Ned knew, and Ned cried. Winterfell belonged to the Starks again, and they had won the war, but victory was never without its losses. The battle for the north had been won and Winterfell reclaimed, but the war was not over. The fates of the traitors had yet to be decided, and some had even escaped when they fled on the battlefield. And even after all of the treachery was burned out, it would leave a scar on the north, perhaps a scar that would last all throughout Robb's reign. Arya was unable to watch the trials as she was recovering in bed and not allowed to wander until Maester Luwin gave her his approval. But she heard what happened from Bran, who visited her often. "All of those who took up swords for the Boltons are set to die," Bran said. "He will not give them the opportunity to take the Black. They are too treacherous for that. The Boltons who took Winterfell are already hanging in the Wolfswood. They did not have clean deaths." "Good," Arya said. "They did not deserve it." She flipped her knife between her fingers. "What about the other families? Umbers, Karstarks, Rysewells, Lockwoods?" "Death for the lords," Bran said. "But the soldiers have the choice to join the Watch. Robb says it would be unwise to deprive the Wall of so many soldiers in this time. He'll pass the Umbers' holdings onto the Umbers who remained at the Wall to assist in the battle against the Wildlings. They have proven themselves true. But the other traitors will have their holdfasts distributed to Stark loyalists and their children given as wards to various northern lords. Robb says that since his children were spared, so will be the children of the traitors. A fair exchange." Arya nodded once. It was fair. To allow the traitors' families to keep their castles and subjects would only show weakness and allow for another vengeful rebellion in a few years' time. But Robb did not stoop to killing innocents. The loyal houses would not respect him if he had. The Lannisters had stayed out of the decision entirely. Though Tywin was present for some of the discussion, he did not voice his opinion, only watched. He must have known that if he asserted himself, he would make Robb look weak in comparison. The only time when he did speak was when Robb told the northern lords about Arya's engagement to Jaime. Arya exhaled, leaning back against her pillow. "I can't tell you how happy I am that I wasn't present for that. How did they react?" "They didn't like it," Bran said. "But after the battle there was very little they could say. Besides, this is Tywin solidifying the Lannister truce with the Starks. With everything in such chaos, the North needs the support of the West and the Crown. That's what Robb said anyway." "Was Jaime there for that meeting?" Arya asked. "No, conveniently absent." Arya laughed once. "Good, so Robb didn't throw him to the wolves." Bran's mouth twitched into a smile. "Some of the northern lords were surely disappointed, though. After your strategy played out so well, I think some were keen to engage you to their sons." "So Robb did tell them that it was my plan." Arya looked out the window. "Were they doubtful?" "A few of them," Bran said. "But it would be a strange thing for Robb to lie about. Then when Lord Tywin confirmed it, well, they knew that he wouldn't give credit to someone else unless it was due." Arya barely smiled. "That's true." Still, the losses could not be overstated. Taliesin was one such loss, but many of the innocent civilians of Winterfell had been butchered as well. Hodor had been spared, but only because the Bolton soldiers found him entertaining. They found him chained in the yard, crying out his name over and over again, and he still could not sleep through the night. And Osha had only survived the reclaiming of the keep by a few hours. "She helped to open the gate again when the Lannister men were fighting off Boltons," Bran murmured, his left hand curling around the 3 fingers on his fight. "She took an arrow. I found her there through Summer's eyes, and Maester Luwin did what he could, but I watched her die." Bran's eyes glistened with tears. "She always defended us, protected us. She helped us survive the Greyjoys. I was so sure she would survive." Arya reached over to rest a hand on her brother's arm. "I'm sorry, Bran. You've suffered so much in these past months, more than me." Bran shook his head. No more than you, Arya, just differently." Bran's company was welcome. So was Sansa's. Her sister visited often and sat by her bedside with her needlework or her book. They spoke when Arya wished to speak and sat in silence when Arya could not find words. But always, Sansa's presence was a comfort. Then, when Robb had finally gotten the most major problems under wraps, he came to visit her as well. "Bran says you're handling everything well," Arya said. "I'm glad it appears that way," Robb said. "Appearances are sometimes what matter most in ruling," Arya said. "You told them about my plan as well." "I did," Robb said. "You deserved it. I wouldn't take the credit away from you." Arya nodded once, staring at her hands. "And where is he?" Arya asked. "Ramsay, what did you do with him?" "He's in the dungeons," Robb said, "with a broken nose and significantly less teeth than before the battle." Arya's hands clenched on her blanket. So he was here, and alive, just like she wanted. But somehow his mere presence in Winterfell made her blood feel like ice. She wanted to kill him and be rid of him already. I wanted to kill him, Robb said, as if echoing her thoughts. I nearly did, but I remembered that you asked me to bring him back alive if I could. Thank you, Arya murmured. You deserve to kill him after what he did to your wife. I need to watch him die. If I don't then my mind might not believe that he's gone. I understand, Robb said, truly. Arya steeled herself and started to rise from bed. Well, let's go. No, Robb held out a hand. Stay here and rest for a while. We can't kill him yet. Why not? Arya asked. Roose Bolton died during the battle, Robb said. Ramsay may be the only one who knows the name of the traitor in the south. Lord Tywin would like to get that name from him one way or another. I can get the name from him if you let me try, Arya muttered. No doubt, but you're in no shape for that right now, Robb said. Rest, he's not going anywhere. How can you be sure of that? He's being kept under watch at all times, Robb said. How could he escape? Because I did. Arya looked up at Robb. Post more guards, don't underestimate him. Robb's gaze softened for just a moment as he seemed to recognize the depth of her fear. She looked away, hoping it might convince him that he had imagined the flash of terror. All right, I'll post more guards. Good, Arya settled back against the pillows as Robb left and closed the door behind him. But she didn't rest. She didn't even close her eyes. Ramsay was caught, yes, but not dead, and as long as he lived she was not safe. Tywin had seen the Bolton bastard's eyes in many people over the years. Those bright, cruel eyes. In the songs, it was always the heroes and fair maidens who had bright eyes, full of joy, and the villains and cold, lifeless eyes that seemed to feel nothing. But in the real world, the most dangerous villains like Ramsay had bright eyes, even when doing the most terrible things. They were not cruel out of necessity or with any real purpose. Their joy was in suffering, and it made their eyes shine. Tywin had seen those eyes in his own grandson, in the mountain who he used for many unpleasant tasks, and before that he had seen those eyes in Aerys Targaryen. The boy looked up at him and gave a bloody smile. Lord Tywin Lannister. He said each part of his name slowly as if savouring it. I've heard so many stories, but I never expected to meet you in person. Then not only do I meet you, I very nearly killed you. I think I would have succeeded too if not for the Stark boy. What do you think? Tywin did not reply. This boy was clearly the kind who liked to talk, and if he let him talk perhaps he would reveal some privileged information. It's a shame, Ramsay continued. I wanted to see if the West could survive without you. Father said that all the lords of the Westerlands were united in fear of Tywin Lannister. You even have that song about your terrible deeds. It's a rather good song. And now the rains weep o'er their halls, and not a soul to hear. Ramsay's head lolled to the side. A memorable melody. I suppose that's what you plan to do to my family. I already have, Tywin said. Your father is dead, he has no other sons but you, and your life is nearly at its end. But not at its end yet, Ramsay said. Why is that again? One moment Robb Stark was fully trying to kill me, the next he had stopped. I don't remember why, because I was a bit dazed from the punching, but I'm guessing it was because you still needed something from me. Isn't that right? Ramsay lifted his chin as if he was trying to look down his nose at Tywin. You want a name. I do, Tywin said. You could save me a great deal of time if you gave it to me now, and you could save yourself a great deal of pain. I'm not concerned with time or pain, Ramsay said, but I have thought about giving you the name. Tywin raised an eyebrow. Have you? Yes, Ramsay said. It's not as if I have any real loyalty to your southern traitor. They have no loyalty to us. We were convenient for them, that's all. Ramsay smirked. But then again, I keep imagining what trouble it will cause for you if I do not tell you. I keep imagining all the chaos, and it makes me smile. You won't live long enough to watch the chaos, Tywin pointed out. That's all right. It makes me happy enough to know it will happen, Ramsay said. After a few days of torture, I'm not sure you will be so happy, Tywin said. I know how torture works, Lord Tywin. I've participated in so much of it, Ramsay said. I think you'll find that it will not loosen my tongue. You are welcome to try, of course. He shifted in his bindings on the chair. Will you let her try too, Arya Stark? Tywin felt an icy anger spread through him. Somehow his mere mentioning of her name made him furious, but he did not let it show. I hope you do, Ramsay continued. She really is something. Sometimes when she snarled I thought she might truly be a wolf in a girl's body, so wild and strong. But those are always the most entertaining to break, aren't they? He laughed once. I hadn't finished with her yet, but I was getting close. I saw her weak. I saw her so afraid. Tywin didn't reply. He just stared Ramsay down. Let him talk. He was only trying to provoke Tywin into giving him a quicker death, or maybe he just wanted to see if he could get under Tywin's skin. Either way, he would not give him the pleasure. Now that I'm captive, I suppose she hopes to break me in exchange, Ramsay said. She would try very hard, I'm sure, and once I draw my last breath, she might even expect to feel safe and strong again. He shook his head. But that's not what will happen. Even after I'm dead, I'll linger in the back of her mind, because I may not have broken her, but I left little cracks with my name on them. She tries to hide them all behind that mask, but they're there. Have you seen them? I hope you've seen them. I'm proud of my work. Tywin did not reply. He let the silence hang in the air, and soon enough it seemed to affect Ramsay. He shifted in his seat, his eyes narrowing. What's wrong? Nothing to say in defense of your ward. His tone was more shaken. Tywin didn't suppose he was used to people standing so calmly in front of him. You must care for her if you return to the battlefield. Speak up. At last Tywin let an icy smile cross his face. Don't make a fool of yourself by trying to provoke me, boy. It won't work. I was Hand of the King to Aerys Targaryen for years. I'm used to dealing with your kind. Do I truly match up with the Mad King? Ramsay's eyes brightened. No, Tywin said. If anything, you are a cheap imitation. That seemed to make him angry. His eyes narrowed and his jaw clenched. Ramsay Bolton liked to fancy himself some sort of powerful figure in this game, but he was nothing more than a dog. He had never been anything more than a rabid mongrel. But in answer to your question, yes, I will let Arya try to loosen your tongue. Tywin turned, stepping toward the cell door. I'll let her kill you if she wants. Your life belongs to her. Ramsay let out a hoarse laugh as Tywin motioned for the guards to unlock the cell. Ah, good. I'm so glad I'll get to see her again. I'll look forward to that. So will she, no doubt, Tywin thought. Then he paused just before he left the cell and drew a dagger from his belt. One more thing before I go, he said. What's that? Ramsay asked. By way of answer, Tywin turned before Ramsay could respond and brought the blade down on Ramsay's hand, severing his two smallest fingers. Ramsay let out a hiss of pain between his teeth, arching in his chair. For a moment, the smug glee in his eyes changed to pain, and Tywin was glad to see it. Without a word, Tywin knelt and picked up both of the fingers in his gloved hand, listening to Ramsay's pained gasps as he did. He opened a pouch and dropped them both inside, closing it tight. Good, just what I needed. He looked up at Ramsay. You took 2 fingers from my ward. It's only fair that you give her 2 fingers back. Ramsay gritted his teeth together, barking out a pained laugh. Ah, I am so glad. I was able to meet you, Lord Tywin. Tywin strode from the cell without another glance at the bastard of Bolton. You won't be for long. Chapter 54, Wolves and Dogs. Arya dreamed that she was back in her prison of a room at the Dreadfort, or at least it nearly looked like the room. It had the same bare-bones furniture, and it was just as cramped as she remembered. But this time, there was a large window made of pale blue stained glass, so expansive that it nearly spanned the whole back wall. Through the window, it seemed as if she could see the whole of Westeros. From Winterfell all the way to King's Landing, the world was laid out before her, and it was breaking apart. She could not begin to take in the chaos. Armies clashed in mass until the rivers ran red with blood, ravens and dragons alike soared through the skies, and there was a creeping darkness that seemed to freeze everything it touched. The world outside the window was a horror, but behind her was something even worse. Ramsay Bolton. He entered the room as he always did, a grin on his face, a knife turning in his hand. The scars he gave her before burned at the sight, his head tilted to the side. So we are back here. Arya dodged his blade as it sliced toward her face, but he moved almost inhumanly fast. She tripped over her own ankles in her haste to dodge and smacked against the window. The glass did not give, and he seized her by the collar, pinning her up against the pale blue glass. It is something out there, isn't it? He asked. Such a beautiful sight. I've never seen so much fire and ice and blood. She could feel his breath on her ear, and it made her physically nauseous. You know what that means, don't you? You know in your heart. This isn't the end. There is so much more to come. Arya shuddered. Yes, she knew that. Somehow she knew there was so much more. Maybe it was Bran's dreams or the mysterious traitor or the fact that her life seemed so attracted to chaos. But she was looking out at the rest of her life through this window, and it was one fight after another. So many fights, and you're not strong enough to face any of it, he whispered in her ear. You weren't even strong enough to face me. You're never going to escape me, little wolf. Arya screamed and pounded on the window, trying to break through, but it did not give, and she was trapped inside that room with her worst nightmare, and all she could do was watch as the world was drowned in blood. Her own scream woke her, that and the feeling of something wet on her hand. Arya jolted awake, clutching at her chest with her left hand. When she looked down toward her mangled right hand, she found Nymeria sitting at her bedside, nudging her fingers with her wet nose. Arya swallowed hard as she looked down at her wolf. Did you wake me, girl? Nymeria did not reply, but her eyes seemed to say yes. She rested her large head on the bed beside Arya. Thank you, Arya murmured, stroking her 3 right fingers through Nymeria's fur. I'm sorry for making you come back for me. You were doing fine on your own, I think. You're stronger than me. She turned to look out her window, half expecting to see the chaos of her dream, but all she saw was the familiar walls of Winterfell. No dragons, no armies, no creeping darkness. No Ramsay. Yet still she trembled in the dark of her room, thinking of the threats still to come, thinking of whether or not she would ever be strong enough to face them. 7 hells, will this ever be over? Ramsay's head was fuzzy, and he found it hard to focus on his surroundings. At first, when he heard the struggle in the hall, he thought he must be dreaming. He blinked, and the space in front of him was guarded by 2 men. He blinked again, and there was only one guard in a Lannister uniform opening the door to his cell. This is an interesting turn of events, he thought, peering up at the soldier suspiciously. Hello there, he said. Are you here to free me? The soldier did not reply. Ramsay focused on the knife in his hand. Or perhaps you are here to kill me, he laughed once. Did your master ask this of you, to kill the Boltons should we ever be taken alive, or at least cut out our tongues? Cersei Lannister wouldn't want her name reaching her father. So you understand, the soldier said. No hard feelings, but you did fail and you need to die. She can't risk you talking. I didn't plan to talk. I'm not so weak, Ramsay said. Though I suppose I'd rather die than face their torture. I'm something of an expert in torture, you see. I know it won't be pleasant. The Lannister man turned a dagger in his hand and stepped forward. Ramsay lifted his chin. Or I have another proposal. Do you? The soldier asked. You have 30 seconds to say it before I cut your throat. Your master hates Arya Stark, doesn't she? Ramsay asked. She wanted to hurt the North, but she wanted to hurt the Stark girl more than anything else. But the Stark girl survived. I can't imagine she'll be happy about that. No, the soldier agreed. Are you suggesting a way to remove the Stark girl? Yes, Ramsay grinned, and if I fail, well, I won't live long enough to return here. The soldier tilted his head to the side. I'm listening. It's not possible, Robb muttered as he stared into the empty cell. In the hall behind him 6 guards lay dead, their blood dried on the stones. The cell door was open, and Ramsay Bolton was gone. Post more guards, Arya had said. Don't underestimate him. And he had listened to her. 6 guards should have been plenty for any normal prisoner. And in addition to that, Winterfell was under heavy guard at every wall. How could he have gotten away? How could Ramsay Bolton have slipped out without anyone noticing? It was impossible. Is it true? Tywin Lannister's voice came from behind him, cold as the wind outside. Robb did not turn. He was furious with himself. Why didn't he just break Ramsay Bolton's fucking legs? Yes, it's true, he said at last. But how far could he possibly get? He could barely keep his eyes open yesterday. He couldn't possibly sneak away without someone noticing. No, not without help, Tywin said. It is possible that a Bolton man snuck inside in the chaos. Robb slammed the side of his fist against the wall. He was tired of traitors. He tried to burn them all out like infection from a wound, and yet some always seemed to remain. And they had released Ramsay Bolton back into the world. Calm yourself, Tywin said. He won't get far. He's lost quite a bit of blood and his head can't be back to normal. It's a desperate final play. Set the hounds to finding him. There's plenty of his scent in this cell. Robb nodded once. Yes, there is. He turned and stalked from room, hopping to find some watchman who had seen Ramsay Bolton's escape. They found evidence of his path soon enough. A rope was tethered to the eastern wall of the godswood, and there was an evidence of a rough fall, blood as well. Ramsay Bolton had left his blood on the snow. The hounds would pick up the trail easily enough. It's a desperate attempt at escape, nothing more, Tywin said flatly. He has nowhere to go. No, Robb agreed. I'll lead the search party to bring him back myself, and this time when I find him, I'll shatter his ankles and knees so that he cannot think to run. Very well, Tywin said. Take my son with you to represent my interests. He rested a hand on his side. I would ride myself, but I don't want to reopen my wound. No, you should stay here, Robb said. He pulled at his glove. And until we return, don't tell Arya. Why keep her in the dark? Tywin asked. She fears him enough when he's in a cell. She pretends she doesn't, but you can see it if you look close enough. Robb's fists clenched. If she finds out he's missing, she won't be able to sleep at all. Tywin didn't speak for a moment, then he nodded. Very well, for now we won't tell her. It isn't as if she can search for him without reopening her wounds. Thank you, Robb said. Then he turned to his men. Gather riders and the hounds outside the east wall. We leave as soon as possible. Jaime was visiting with Arya when the Lannister messenger knocked on the door and asked to see him for a moment in the hall. That was the first thing that pricked Arya's suspicion. If Lord Tywin had sent a messenger to talk to Jaime, then he wouldn't be concerned about her overhearing. Then again, perhaps the messenger had thought the words were meant for Jaime alone. A moment later, Jaime re-entered the room with a very serious expression. That was the second thing that set her nerves on edge. What's wrong? Did something happen? No, nothing, Jaime said. A lie. He was lying to her. Your brother asked for my assistance on something. 7 hells, that's something I never expected to say. Did you ever think you would see us getting along so well? He doesn't exactly like you, Arya said. He tolerates you. That in and of itself is a miracle, Jaime said. I'm sorry to cut our visit short, but I expect I'll be back very soon. Back from what? Arya asked. Nothing important. If it was nothing important, you would just tell me. Jaime sighed and glanced to the side. We're scouting for the remains of the enemy forces to see if any of them have hidden the woods. Your brother wanted Lannister troops to cover more ground. Does that satisfy you? It didn't, it was still a lie, but Arya forced a smile and nodded once. Yes, be careful. Jaime nodded once. You as well. I don't imagine I can get into much trouble in this room, Arya pointed out. Nonetheless, Jaime glanced over his shoulder. You do have bad luck, it never hurts to be on guard. Then he left the room, his last comment ringing in her ears. It never hurts to be on guard. He said like something of a joke, and yet at the same time it felt like a warning. By the next night, Jaime and Robb had not returned with their men, but no one told Arya exactly why they had gone. There was something wrong in the air, something other than the secrets. Arya could sense it. Granted, everything seemed wrong these days. She rarely slept for fear that she would not be prepared for the next threat. The atmosphere of Winterfell was taut with tension at all times. But tonight it felt worse. She sat straight up in bed, staring out the window, watching and waiting for the shadows to move. She turned her knife over and over again in her hand. Arya, Sansa murmured, you should sleep. You haven't slept in days. You need rest to heal. I am resting, Arya murmured. I'm just not sleeping. Sansa put down her needlework and went over to her side. I'll wait with you while you sleep. I'll keep watch. And if an enemy comes, will you fight them? Arya asked sharply. Sansa flinched and a shard of guilt pierced Arya's heart. I'm sorry, I don't expect you to. It's all right, Sansa said. Besides, you have Nymeria to guard you. Arya's brow furrowed and she looked toward the door. Sansa, where is Nymeria? Maybe she heard a sound and decided to investigate, Sansa said. She'll be back. You know how she never stays still for too long. She's like you in that way. Which is why this bed is beginning to drive me mad, Arya sighed. It still felt wrong. It all felt so wrong. She looked out the window again. This time the shadows did move. No, it was smoke. Someone had set a fire. Fire, Arya murmured. There's a fire, Sansa. The door slammed closed. Arya whipped around, so fast she felt pain spike through her torso. Ramsay Bolton stood in the centre of the room, just behind Sansa. One hand covered her mouth and the other pressed a blade to her throat. His face was a mess of dried blood, and he was missing 2 fingers on his right hand just like her. though he still managed to grip his knife without any trouble. He swayed a bit where he stood, as if he was having trouble keeping balance. Clearly he was not at his best, but she wasn't at her best either. "Hello again," Ramsay purred. His voice sent a deep shiver through Arya. "Did you miss me, little wolf?" Arya couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up and her tongue felt like lead in her mouth. She knew he would come back for her. He had haunted her dreams enough. She knew she would see him again. Her hand flashed to her bedside, snatching her knife, but before she could move to throw it, she heard Sansa whimper. Ramsay pressed his blade harder to her throat, slicing shallowly into the skin. Arya froze as she saw a few drops of blood rolled down her pale neck. "That's it," Ramsay said. "You stay still, or I'll open Lady Sansa's throat right here. The red will go with her hair, don't you think?" Arya did not reply. She did not trust herself to speak to him. Anger and fear mixed in her chest, absolutely enveloping her being. She wanted to rip him to peace. She wanted to carve his smile from his face. But the moment she moved to do so, he would kill Sansa. "My gamble worked out rather well," Ramsay said. "A bit of blood outside of the walls of Winterfell and your brother assumed I had left the castle." He smirked. "Not that I could have gotten very far. Smarter to hide within the walls and wait for some of your protectors to leave." That was what Jaime was hiding. Ramsay had escaped and they hadn't told her. Did they really think her so weak that they were keeping secrets now? "Oh, you didn't know I escaped, did you?" Ramsay asked. "I can see it on your face. Perhaps they did not want to worry you. That's very sweet." His smile widened. "This is what is going to happen. You're going to put down that knife and come to me. You left before our wedding. It was very awkward for me, you know, not having a bride or a wedding night. I think we should remedy that." Arya's grip tightened on her knife. She did not move. She did not reply. "Look at you, more a startled cat than a wolf." "Have I been visiting you in your nightmares, my lady?" Ramsay purred. Arya wished that she could say no. She wished that Ramsay had never gotten any hold over her mind, but her tongue and eyes would not lie today, and her hand trembled as she gripped her blade. Ramsay's gaze hardened just slightly. He lifted Sansa's chin with the blade. "The knife, little wolf, put it down. You won't be able to use it properly with that mangled right hand of yours." Arya looked from Ramsay to Sansa. She expected to see terror in her sister's eyes. Instead she saw defiance, and a silent promise. Arya relaxed her grip on the blade and straightened. "No, but I'm left-handed." Sansa's hand snapped up. She grasped Ramsay's knife with her bare fingers, screaming as it cut into her skin, but it blocked the edge from her throat, and that was all Arya needed. She hurled the knife at Ramsay. It took him in the eye, not deep enough to kill him, but deep enough to make him howl. With a cry, Sansa pushed away from him, falling to the floor. Arya lunged at Ramsay without a second thought, slamming into him with the full force of her body and tackling him to the ground. She twisted the knife in his eye and sank her teeth into his ear, ripping at the flesh like wolf in her dream. She relished his screams and the taste of his blood. It was a joy to make him bleed. He still had a knife too. She felt it cut into her side, and she rolled off of him to avoid the worst of the damage, landing in a crouch beside the bed. Ramsay still had her knife in his eye and a bloody knife of his own. But she had 2 swords under her bed. She grabbed the first one her hand felt as he came at her. Needle. She stepped back from a vicious swing from his blade and jabbed it forward, poking a hole in his stomach. Blood spilled from the wound, but he was not easily deterred. He had the eyes of a mad dog. He gripped the thin blade and took it with him as he fell back, disarming her again. "That's all right, I have another sword." Arya knelt and found Winter's Fury beneath the bed as well. "How many swords do you have?" Ramsay gasped out, his remaining eye blazing with hate. Arya smiled coldly, drawing her blade from its sheath and casting it to the ground. "Enough to kill you." She lunged at him. He threw needle at her. The tip cut a streak across her cheek, but missed anything important. She cut a wide arc with her blade, slicing deep across his chest. He coughed and fell back. His knife slipped from his hand and skidded across the ground, and when he reached for it, she sliced the rest of his hand clean off. His scream made her feel strong. Every part of Arya's body burned. She could feel fresh blood pouring from her wounds, old and new, but she felt strong as she stared down at him. "Are you surprised?" she said flatly. "You kept calling me little wolf, and you know well enough that wolves have teeth." The bedroom door rattled and Arya heard growling just beyond. A dark little thought entered her mind as she looked down at Ramsay, bleeding out, choking on his own breath. It would be easy to take his head with her own sword, or she could leave him to bleed. He would be dead in a few minutes if she did. But that was too clean an ending for him. Slowly Arya paced around him, turning Winter's fury in her hand. You like to hurt people, don't you? You like to scare them, break them. It gives you a lot of pleasure. I could tell that about you when we first met. She stopped in front of the door. But it's a gamble trying to break a person instead of killing them, because if they don't break, then they'll break you. Ramsay laughed. It was a hysterical, pained sound. Are you going to break me, little wolf? Arya tilted her head to the side. I may be a little wolf, but I am a wolf nonetheless. You're just a rabid dog. She placed her hand on the handle of the door. Do you know what wolves do to dogs, Ramsay? You didn't give me an answer the first time I asked. What do wolves do to dogs? Now he didn't reply. She relished the fear in his eyes. He was trying to hide it with rage, but he was too weak to make it convincing. It's all right, I'll show you, Arya said. Then she opened the door. Nymeria was on him in the blink of an eye. Ramsay screamed as she tore at his arms, at his face, at his throat. Nymeria did not go immediately for the throat, as if she sensed that this man did not deserve a quick end. But when he was barely recognizable and his screams became wet, she sunk her teeth deep into his neck and silenced him. For a moment there was silence in the room. Arya took a few steps forward toward the body, looking down at the ruined mess. She was aware of Sansa again, Sansa who had witnessed the whole encounter. Her sister was staring at her with one part worry and one part horror. Slowly Arya sagged against the wall. Now that the adrenaline began to die, she felt weakness returning to her, and she was painfully aware of her wounds. Arya, Sansa pushed herself to her feet. You're bleeding again. I'll be fine, Arya murmured, but internally she was cursing herself. She should have gotten a name. Why had she forgotten about the name entirely? In the midst of her rage and fear, the traitor had disappeared from her mind. There was only Ramsay and the need to destroy him. Don't move, Sansa said. I'll find Maester Luwin, do not move. Arya's eyelids were heavy as she heard the footsteps pace away. She looked up at Nymeria, who looked right back at her, blood dripping from her maw. It's over, she thought. He's dead, I killed him. Why then did she still feel weak? Chapter 55, Delirium. Tywin knew that something was wrong as soon as he saw the smoke. He was suspicious by nature, and with Ramsay Bolton on the loose, well, this couldn't possibly be an accident. Tywin cursed himself for being so foolish. They had found evidence that the bastard had escaped the castle, but if he had really thought about it, the likelihood of an injured man making it so far without their notice was low. It would have been smarter for him to hide somewhere in the keep and wait to regain his senses. Once he did, he would look for leverage, and that leverage would be Arya. Tywin immediately called upon his guards and made for Arya Stark's room. He could only hope that Robb Stark had been smart enough to give his sister some sort of guard, and if he hadn't, Tywin should have given some of his own men. He had resolved to let Robb Stark handle the situation in the north, but he should not have left him to handle his ward. When he reached the foot of the stairs to the west wing, he nearly ran into Sansa Stark, who was stumbling down the stairs. Tywin caught her shoulders and steadied her. There was blood on her dress and a nearly bone-deep cut on her hand that gushed blood, as if she had grabbed a knife with her bare palm. What happened? Tywin asked. Arya, Sansa muttered. I need Maester Luwin. Is she alive? Tywin asked, fearing the worst for a moment. She's alive, Sansa said, but she's bleeding again, her wounds. She shook her head. I can't lift her. The girl was in shock. Something had happened, but her mind wasn't wrapping around it. But at the very least it seemed Arya was alive, for now. Go find your Maester, Tywin said at last. Bring him here as quickly as possible. My guards will secure the room until you return. Do you understand? For a moment she didn't reply. Then she seemed to process his words and her eyes snapped into focus. Yes. Then she hurried off in the opposite direction. Tywin snapped his fingers and his guards rushed up the stairs toward Arya's room. He followed. He did not know what he expected to see in Arya Stark's room, but it wasn't this. Blood stained the floorboards and splattered the walls and furniture. Most of it seemed to come from the mess on the ground. It had once been a man, Tywin imagined, but that man's face had been torn away along with his throat. His gaze followed the trail of blood to Arya Stark. She was sitting on the ground, leaned up against the wall, one arm wrapped around her middle. Her head was dipped and her hair hung in front of her face. She was covered in blood, though Tywin could not tell how much of it was hers. Her maimed hand was twisted in the fur of her wolf who lay by her side, growling at his guards. The wolf's maw was dripping with blood. Tywin took one step forward and the wolf bristled, snapping its bloody jaws. His guards flinched and stepped back in fear. Tywin did not move. He kept his expression and voice calm. "Arya, can you hear me?" She shifted slightly at the sound of his voice, though she did not look up. "Lord Tywin." "Yes," he said. "What happened?" "I took care of Ramsay Bolton," she murmured. "You should have told me he escaped. I could have been more prepared." So it was Ramsay Bolton on the floor. 7 hells. None of her previous targets had ever received so brutal a death, though he had no doubt he had earned it. "We need to get you off the floor," Tywin said. "You've likely reopened your wounds." "Yes," she murmured. Her voice was weak and hoarse. He had never heard her speak quite so softly. "That's likely." "I don't think your wolf will let us past," he said. She seemed to consider this for a moment. Then she released her wolf and urged her away. "Nymeria, away, these aren't enemies." The wolf listened to her without a second thought, though it kept its eyes on Tywin as it moved off into the corner. A beast of that size could kill him and all of his men if it desired, and he did not intend to provoke it. Once the wolf was sitting, Tywin moved over to Arya and knelt in front of her. From here he was able to better assess the damage. Blood stained her tunic where she had opened old wounds, and her clothing was sliced in a few places where she had earned new ones. A thin cut marked her cheek as well. When she looked up at him through her wild dark hair, her grey eyes were cloudy and exhausted, and when he touched her shoulder he could feel her trembling. She was alive, yes, but in a great deal of pain. She needed the Maester soon. And yet she apologized. "I'm sorry," she muttered. "I didn't get a traitor's name." He shook his head. "Worry about staying alive before you worry about that, Lady Arya." Then he motioned to 2 of his guards to approach. "Lift her onto the bed, carefully." The guards did so, though she winced in pain as they moved her. She did not cry out. She was so unwilling to let anyone see her in pain, even when she was openly bleeding. In his memory, he had only seen her truly scream once after her escape from the Dreadfort. It was not a sound he wished to hear again. He turned his gaze once again on the mess that was Ramsay Bolton, finding himself satisfied that Arya had dealt him such a gruesome fate. He spied Winters laying close to the corpse, dripping with the bastard's blood. Tywin retrieved it from the ground and used his own red cloth to wipe it clean. Then he rested it at the foot of Arya's bed. Is Sansa all right?" Arya murmured. Her eyes fluttered as she seemed to grow delirious from blood loss. "Her hand, is she angry with me?" "I doubt that," Tywin said, though he imagined seeing her sister kill a man in such a way was a shock for the girl. "She'll return soon." "She's angry with me. She always used to get angry with me," Arya murmured. Her eyes were in some far-off place like someone close to death, but Tywin would not allow himself to believe that. She had survived so much already. This would not be what killed her. A mongrel like Ramsay Bolton could never end Arya Stark. "Because I made a mess of things," she said. "I always made a mess of things. Mother said the same. I think I've made a mess of things again." Tywin's jaw clenched and he looked to the guards. "See if you can't find the Stark girl and the Maester. Tell them to hurry." The guards obeyed without question, and the other 2 were left to guard the door. "All of this mess was because of me," she continued on, "because I wasn't quick enough or smart enough." "You're not to blame for any of it. Focus on staying awake." "I'm tired." "I don't care. You are not allowed to sleep yet." "I'm tired of fighting," she murmured. "It's exhausting. I want to stop fighting for once." "I know," he replied. "Where in the 7 hells is their Maester?" He did not like seeing his ward like this. Part of him wanted to leave the room entirely so that he did not have to endure her suffering, but he could not leave her. Arya coughed. Where is?" "Your sister will be here soon," Tywin said flatly. "Father," Arya mumbled. "Where is father?" Tywin did not have a reply to that. This wasn't exactly the moment to remind Arya that her father was long dead, but he didn't know what else to say. A shudder went through Arya's body and she reached out toward the ceiling. "Father, where are you? Are you there?" Tywin stared at her outstretched hand for a long moment. He had seen Arya Stark as many things over these years. A clever cupbearer, a stubborn child, a valuable bargaining chip, a vicious fighter, an intelligent strategist, a lady, a wolf. And here she was a girl crying out for her long-dead father, reaching for him but finding only air. He wasn't sure what moved him to extend his hand, but the moment he did, She gripped onto it like it was a lifeline. Fine, he told himself, whatever keeps her alive. Sansa ran as fast as she could to find Maester Luwin, though blood loss was making her dizzy. When she stumbled into his rooms, he was just blowing out the candles to prepare for bed. But once she told him what had happened, he scrambled about to find his materials, asking her questions about Arya's injuries. I don't know, Sansa said. Old wounds opened, a few new wounds with a blade, I don't know how deep. Maester Luwin nodded and gathered everything he thought he would need in 2 baskets. He handed one to her and carried one himself as they hurried back through the keep. Despite his age, he moved swiftly. There was no time to lose. Arya had survived worse, but sometimes the lesser things could still kill. They met with 2 Lannister guards on the way, and found 2 Lannister guards at the door to Arya's room as well. When they opened the door, Sansa first saw the bloody mess that used to be Ramsay Bolton, and she felt a shiver go through her. The emotions of that moment were still fresh. The fear as Ramsay Bolton had grabbed her and pressed a knife to her throat, the terror for her sister who he meant to harm, the pain as she gripped the knife to give Arya a chance to fight him, and then, the emotion she felt as she destroyed him. She did not have a word for that feeling. Was it fear or elation or horror or regret or fury or nausea or vindication? Was it all of those at once? She could not say. But then what she had felt didn't matter. Ramsay Bolton was not her concern anymore. Her sister was still alive and she needed help. She turned in time to see Tywin Lannister standing and stepping away from Arya to give Maester Luwin enough space. Sansa hurried past the Lord of Casterly Rock without a second glance, clasping her sister's hand, which was grasping at air. Arya, she murmured, it's all right, Maester Luwin is here, you'll be all right. Sansa, Arya squeezed her hand tightly. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, Sansa whispered. You saved me, Arya, you saved me, thank you. On the other side of the bed, Nymeria let out a low whine and rested her great head on the bed beside Arya. She feared for her too, which was not a good sign. 2 of her old wounds are opened, Maester Luwin said. The new ones are minor. The most important thing is stopping the bleeding. Sansa, put your hand here, put pressure on the wound. Sansa obeyed, pressing hard on a cloth and watching it stain red. She did not mind the blood. As long as her sister lived, she did not mind anything at all. Some time later, Maester Luwin claimed the worst had passed, and Arya had drifted off into a more comfortable sleep. She had a fever, but he was keeping it down with cool cloths, and she was not shaking as much as before. Still, Sansa did not let go of her hand. She wanted to feel the warmth beneath her skin to remind herself that she was still alive. If she makes it through the night, she will live, Maester Luwin murmured, pressing a fresh cloth to Arya's brow. Her wounds were clean, so there's little danger of infection. It looked worse than it was. She needs rest and plenty of food and water so that she can return to her old strength. Of course, Sansa murmured. And what of your hand, Sansa? Maester Luwin asked. Sansa looked down at her own bandages. It hurts, but it's not near as bad as hers. I will be fine. Maester Luwin nodded once. So will she. I've always known your sister to heal very quickly. Yes, Sansa agreed, which is for the best. She was always the one throwing herself into danger. She picked at her bandage. Do you remember when she broke her arm? Oh yes, she was 8, I believe, Maester Luwin said. A clean break, lucky for her. Some bones never heal the way they were. I forget how she broke it exactly, falling out of a tree. Yes, Sansa said. We were in the woods and we saw a tree that had been damaged by a harsh wind. It was in danger of falling. There was a nest of birds there. Somehow it hadn't fallen, but it was danger of tipping, and if the tree collapsed, they would be lost. I was so afraid for them and thought to go find Robb or father to help them down. But Arya climbed the tree herself, Maester Luwin said. Yes, scrambled right up in her new dress. I warned her that Septa Mording would be very cross with her for that, but she didn't care. Sansa barely smiled. Next thing I knew, she was hanging upside down on a branch trying to reach the nest. Did she get it? I can't recall, Maester Luwin said. She did, Sansa said. The moment she did, the branch broke from her weight. She fell and landed on her right arm, but she had the birds cradled against her chest. She was crying from the pain, but she was so proud of herself. Look, she said, I told you I could do it. She looked down at Arya's sleeping face. She tucked them in the hollow of a stronger tree while I ran to get help, and even though her arm hurt, she was still smiling. Maester Luwin smiled. That does sound like your sister. Yes, Sansa said. The trouble was what happened after. After she was feeling better, we returned to the woods to find the birds, this time with Father, and they were gone. Their nest was in tatters and there wasn't one bird to be found. Father said they may have flown off somewhere, but Arya was certain they had been eaten. It was too soon to fly, she said. They hadn't flown, they were gone. They were dead and none of it mattered. Sansa swallowed hard. She cried harder then than she did when she broke her arm. So did you, I imagine, Maester Luwin said. Yes, but I cried at everything, Sansa said. Not Arya, she never cried, so I hated to see it then. We fought so often, but I never wanted to see her like that. Of course not, Maester Luwin said. All of you children fought, but when it came down to it, you were a family. You cared when one of you were hurt, truly hurt. There's been a lot of hurt in the past few years, Sansa murmured. I wish I had discovered the plot against Robb sooner. If I had, the cost would not be as great. Robb could have dealt with the traitors and came north in time to stop the siege, and Taliesin might still be alive, if I had just been a bit quicker. You can't blame yourself for that, Maester Luwin said. But I do, Sansa said. I thought I was helping, doing something worthwhile, but it was just like with the birds. It didn't matter in the end, it didn't make any difference. I think you'll find it did. The voice came from the doorway behind her. Sansa turned to see Tywin Lannister standing there. He had left at some point and she had forgotten all about him, but it seemed he had returned. She wondered how long he had been standing there. She stood, smoothing down her skirts and dipping into a curtsy. She never forgot her courtesies, and she was not about to start now. My lord, forgive me, I did not notice your return. Tywin shook his head, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. You sent that letter with a rider and gave him specific instructions. Do you remember what they were? To deliver the letter straight to my brother or mother. No one else, she said. And if they could not find them, Tywin asked. Sansa's brow furrowed. The rider gave the letter to you, didn't he? Yes, Tywin said. Your brother and mother were at the twins at the time of the rider's arrival, trying to bargain for your younger brother's life. But since you had the foresight to send the man to me, I was able to use your information to cut off the traitors before they could make their escape. Without that letter, many more men would have joined Roose Bolton's armies in the north. Not to mention you provided your brother with the names of every traitor. I would hardly call that useless. Sansa clasped her hands tightly together. Then would it have made a difference if the letter had reached you sooner? Perhaps, but I don't think that matters. You can't change what has passed, Tywin said, and you could just as easily fault the rider for the delay. Sansa bit her lip. She wasn't so sure of that. She should have investigated the northern lords before Jon ever sent her the note, if she had. At her silence, Lord Tywin raised an eyebrow. Is it a Stark trait to blame yourselves so constantly for things which you did not do? Yes, Maester Luwin said from Arya's bedside. They learned it from their father, I expect. No matter what good he did, he never saw it as enough. That doesn't surprise me about him. Tywin paced to the other side of the room, studying Arya, as if checking to see if she was still breathing. Though I suppose when one is so committed to honour, they are bound to fail more often. For a moment, Sansa forgot herself and her eyes narrowed just slightly. Is that why you found so much success? Tywin looked back at her, unruffled by the comment. Yes, it is. Sansa lifted her chin. I'm sure my father preferred his honour to your success. Tywin studied her. Ah, I see it now. See what? She asked. Your resemblance to your sister. Then, as if stirred by Tywin's mention of her, Arya jolted awake, gasping for breath. Sansa bent and caught her hand tightly in her own. Arya, it's all right, you're safe. She reached out, pushing her tangled hair back from her forehead. You're safe, everything is fine. Ramsay, Arya muttered. Ramsay was. I know, but he's gone now. You took care of him, Sansa said gently. Arya blinked hard as her memory seemed to return to her. She looked from Sansa's face to her injured hand. Are you all right? Sansa nodded once, offering her a reassuring smile. I'm all right, you will be too. Arya nodded once. Then she sagged back against her pillow and promptly fell asleep again. She'll need rest before she's at full strength again, Maester Luwin said. Sansa, you should rest as well. It's been a trying day for you. Sansa stood slowly from her seat, releasing Arya's hand and setting it gently on the bed beside her. She knew well enough that she needed sleep. Maester Luwin could be trusted to watch over Arya until morning, so could Nymeria. Reluctantly she moved toward the door but stopped just before she left. Lord Tywin, I imagine you'll be taking Arya south again soon. Yes, Tywin said. Then I hope you will not let anything happen to her there, Sansa said. The North won't forget if you do. Then, without another word, she slipped from the room and closed the door behind her. Her body seemed to buzz in the wake of saying those words to such a powerful man, but she did not intend to take them back. Years ago, Tywin Lannister had chosen to take Arya hostage, and Sansa was free to return home, and for the first time in a long while, she had found herself amongst friends and family. But that was at the cost of her sister's freedom. She thought about her nearly every day, trapped in Bloody Keep, a wolf amongst lions. But her sister had done better there than Sansa could ever have hoped, better than she did at any rate. Sansa did not like Tywin Lannister, and she blamed him for many of her family's troubles. He could at least be trusted to keep Arya safe when they returned south. And if he couldn't, then there would be 7 hells to pay. Chapter 56, Broth. Catelyn was accustomed to bad news at this point in her life. She was accustomed to her children finding themselves in danger as well, but she did not expect to wake that morning to news of her youngest daughter nearly dying in a desperate scuffle with Ramsay Bolton. She only heard every other word that Sansa told her, words like reopened wounds and knife and blood loss, and she feared the worst. Dead. Was her Arya dead? Mother, Sansa rested her hand on her shoulder. She's fine, really. Maester Luwin is with her now and he insists that she will live. Catelyn shook her head, trying to gather herself. Sleep still clung to her mind and made this conversation seem like some awful dream. Why didn't you wake me? I did not want to wake you unless I had news, Sansa said. You've spent so much time worrying over us. I thought I would take a turn at worrying for a change. Catelyn let out a single hoarse laugh. Don't act as if you've been sitting peacefully at Winterfell without a care in the world, Sansa. You spent a month in the dark of the crypts worrying. You needn't worry about me too. Sansa nodded once and looked down at her hands. Only then did Catelyn recognize the bandages. She reached down, gently taking that hand in hers. You're hurt as well. A knife, Sansa said. I grabbed the blade to give Arya a chance to attack Ramsay Bolton. Catelyn exhaled. Her daughter would have a scar on her palm, and it would closely resemble one that she had received some years ago protecting Bran from an assassin's blade. Sansa had defended her sister just as fiercely, though she had no weapons with which to do so. She had grown into a fine, brave young woman. At last she released Sansa's hand. I should go to her. Is she awake? Not yet, but I'm sure you won't bother her, Sansa said. Good, Catelyn smiled. Get some sleep, Sansa, you look quite tired. Sansa nodded once. I will try, Mother. Once Sansa was gone, Catelyn made her way swiftly to Arya's room. She found Lannister guards at the door when she arrived, which struck her as strange, and when she entered the first thing she noticed was Tywin Lannister sitting by her daughter's bed. Why is he here, was her first thought. Tywin Lannister was not the type to sit worrying by someone's bedside. She had only briefly seen him in Arya's tent after she first escaped Winterfell, and then only passing through to check on her progress with the Maester. Now he was sitting, watching over her. Why? He looked up when Catelyn entered, and for a moment he shifted like he intended to stand and leave, but he didn't. So they woke you? Catelyn asked, her voice coming out flat. No one woke me, Tywin said. There was a fire. I found it suspicious. I came to Arya's room because I assumed the worst. And the worst was correct, Catelyn said. It usually is with you Starks, he said. Catelyn nodded once. Part of her wanted to fight with him, not for any reason really, just because she did not much like Tywin Lannister and she had not forgiven him for taking her daughter away, but the other part of her was tired. She did not have the energy to argue. She was simply worried about Arya. Slowly she drifted to Arya's side, brushing her hair back from her forehead. She's always been such a trial, Catelyn murmured. Always worrying me, always causing me grief. She sometimes relished in causing trouble. She still does, Tywin said. Catelyn smiled faintly. Now I'm sure she just wishes for peace. Peace is a rather hard thing to come by, Tywin said. Yes, Catelyn said, but she deserves it, after all of these years. She looked up at the Lord of Casterly Rock. When will you take her south? Catelyn asked. When she is well enough to travel, Tywin said. And soon after you will make her into a Lannister. Tywin did not reply. There was really no good answer to her statement. No matter who she marries, no matter what name you give her, It doesn't matter. My girl has more of the North in her than most of my children. She looked up at him. She will always be a Stark. She half expected him to protest, to lay some sort of claim over Arya, but he did not seem eager to start a fight either, and his next words surprised her. I have no doubt of that, Lady Stark, Tywin said. Your daughter would not allow anyone to suggest otherwise. And you care what my daughter suggests, she thought but did not say. She had not entirely figured out why Tywin was here, or maybe she had figured it out but did not know how to process it. Whatever the case, in this moment they were united. Both of them wanted to see Arya wake. Arya woke in the early morning feeling cold and weak. When she moved, fresh pain shot through her body, as if to remind her of the damage which she had suffered. For a moment she did not remember what had happened. Then it all came rushing back at once, and she reached toward her bedside table, searching for a knife on instinct. A hand rested on her shoulder. No, Arya, stay still. It was Maester Luwin. She recognized his warm, gentle voice in an instant, though it took her a moment to focus on him. She saw his face first, then her mother's hovering just behind him, and in the opposite corner of the room stood Lord Tywin. Maester Luwin and Arya's mother were familiar faces in this room, but Tywin was so strangely out of place. Her life was split into two parts, Arya Stark of Winterfell and Arya Stark, ward of Tywin Lannister. When those two lives intersected, there was a sort of tonal dissonance. Her family in the south did not seem right, and Tywin in the north, in the room of her childhood, did not seem right either. How are you feeling? Catelyn asked, breaking Arya from her thoughts. I'm fine, she managed at last. Tired and, my side hurts, actually everywhere hurts. Your side was the worst of the new wounds, Maester Luwin said, but I'm pleased to say that you will recover. It will be some time before you are back to normal, but you will live. Arya nodded once, looking around the room. She didn't know what she was searching for. Maybe Ramsay's body. No, of course they had removed that. It felt like someone else should be here. Arya, Catelyn asked, are you all right? Who was here last night? Arya asked. My memories are strange. Myself and your sister, Maester Luwin said. Lord Tywin as well and some of his guard. Why do you ask? Arya shook her head as she realized. In her delirious state she had thought, but that was foolish. I'm sorry, it was just a dream I had that felt very real. Vivid dreams are quite common when one is near death, Maester Luwin said. What did you dream? Catelyn asked, kneeling beside her bed. I dreamed of father, Arya said. I dreamed he was beside me, holding my hand. Her mother's eyes glistened with tears. Oh, Arya, perhaps he was. Yes, perhaps indeed, Maester Luwin said with a rather strange look on his face, almost as if he knew something that she did not. From out of the corner of her eye she saw Tywin shift. He was moving toward the door as if he had suddenly remembered he had some important place to be. Arya looked up in confusion. Lord Tywin. He paused and looked back at her. I'm glad to see you awake again, he said flatly. Hopefully this is your last brush with death for some time. Arya swallowed hard. I hope so as well. Tywin nodded once. For one more moment he lingered in the silence of the room, then he gave her and her mother a nod and took his leave. Arya stared at the door for a long moment after he had gone. Yes, it was quite strange to see Tywin Lannister in this place, but at the same time she did not mind his presence. That was stranger still. The hunt for Ramsay Bolton had not been a success, though the hounds picked up on a trail that took them through the woods, but after only a few hours it was clear the trail had gone cold. They continued through the Wolfswood and camped that night at an abandoned shack which they had hoped might be a hiding place for their target. But he wasn't there, and they were left to wait out the night, all the while knowing that Ramsay Bolton could be getting further away. The next morning the trail was still cold, and the Lord of Winterfell was clearly not happy about it. Jaime could read Robb's fury over his face as he whipped his horse around again and again. He looked over every tree as if expecting to find Ramsay hiding in the branches or tucked behind the gnarled roots, but there was nothing, no sign of him at all. He could have doubled back toward the castle to shake our trail, Robb said. Sir Jaime, I suggest you return to Winterfell and alert your father. Tell him to keep looking around the castle. We'll continue to search the woods. Jaime nodded once. He was glad to return to the castle to warn them. He needed to warn Arya too. If Ramsay had any designs on finding her, she needed to be prepared. He had thought keeping his escape a secret from her was a bad idea in the first place. Better she be afraid but ready than caught off guard by that wretched bastard. He rode hard back to Winterfell, reaching the gates by just before midday. When he rode through the gates, he searched for a Lannister man who might know where his father was. Instead he saw Sansa Stark crossing the courtyard. Jaime swung from his horse and approached her. "Lady Sansa." "Sir Jaime," she turned to face him, clasping her hands together in front of her. Her hand was bandaged. "Has the rest of the party returned with you?" "Just me," Jaime said. "Your brother sent me to bring news. Our trail on Ramsay Bolton is cold. He worried he may have doubled back." "He didn't," Sansa said. "Good," Jaime said. "None the less I should speak to my father. He'll want to know." "You misunderstand," Sansa said firmly before he could finish. "Ramsay Bolton didn't double back because he never left. He was hiding in the keep." Jaime's eyes widened. He glanced down at Sansa's bandaged hand again, then up to her face. "And, what about Arya?" He stumbled over his words for a moment, fearing the worst. He did not tell Arya about Ramsay, so she wasn't prepared. He could have burst into her room and killed her. She was injured after all, not at her best. Killing her would be much easier than usual. But Sansa's expression was not one of grief. She was calm and she offered him a smile. "He's dead. Arya killed him." She glanced toward the keep. "She was injured, but our Maester says she'll make a full recovery." Jaime felt the breath leave him. Gods above, even injured, Arya was not one to trifle with. He imagined Ramsay Bolton had made the mistake of underestimating her when he entered that room. He saw how thin she was, how pale, and he thought he could take her easily. And Arya bit back. It must have been quite the sight. "And you, my lady?" Jaime asked at last when he had regained his tongue. "I see that you've injured your hand. Are you all right?" "Well enough," Sansa said. "It hurts dreadfully and it will scar, but it was only my hand. Arya made sure of that." She smiled. "You can see her if you'd like. I think she's awake now. I'll arrange for a rider to go to Robb to call him off the hunt." Jaime gave Sansa a little bow. "Yes, thank you, Lady Sansa." He made his way quickly from the courtyard to the keep, and wound his way through the halls of Winterfell. He remembered the way to Arya's room well enough, though he had only been there a few times. When he reached the door, he found it guarded by 2 Lannister men, and he heard a voice inside. "Must eat something, Arya. You're thin enough as it is." Catelyn Stark. He imagined the woman was beside herself at nearly losing a child again. Jaime did feel for her. It could not be easy to be the mother of the Stark children. They were nearly always getting themselves into trouble. "I'll eat later, I'm not hungry." That was Arya. Her voice was weak, but it had a familiar petulant tone to it. He was glad to hear her speak at all. She could have died last night. "It doesn't matter if you're hungry. You lost a lot of blood." Jaime took a deep breath and knocked on the door. Then he waited until he heard Arya murmured, "Come in." He opened the door and stepped inside. Arya was lying in bed, propped up on one of her pillows. Her face was deathly pale and her eyes tired, but she did not look to be on death's door. Her mother sat beside her bed with a bowl of broth in her hands, a bowl that Arya was apparently refusing. "Jaime," Arya straightened slightly when she saw him. "You're back." "I'm back," Jaime agreed. He glanced from her to her mother, who was, as always, eyeing him with some suspicion, but there was a strange note to her gaze this time, something like confusion. She looked from him to Arya, and Arya looked from her to him. No one seemed to know quite where to look, and it created a dreadfully awkward silence in the room. At last Catelyn rose and set the bowl of broth on the table beside Arya's bedside. Then she smoothed down her skirts and made for the door. "I'll be back in an hour." She paused and looked up at Jaime. "Perhaps you can make her eat." "I will try my best," Jaime said. He watched her slip from the room and closed the door behind her. "Every time I take a bite I feel nauseous," Arya said, "so I don't want any." "None the less, your mother is right. You need to eat." Jaime turned back to face her. "It will help you heal." "Yes, heal from my encounter with Ramsay." She glared at him. "You should have told me that he had escaped." "I know." Jaime came further into the room and sat at the chair by her bedside. "The moment we left I wished I had." "If only you had that moment sooner." "If only." Arya let out a short breath and looked down at her hands. Jaime watched her tug at each of the 3 fingers of her right hand. "I am sorry," Jaime said. "You deserve to know, but your brother insisted and my father insisted and, well, I'm not very good at going against my father. You might have noticed." "I have," Arya said, "but it's all right. Actually, you may have saved me in the end." Jaime blinked. What do you mean? You're a terrible liar, Arya said. I knew something was wrong when you came to visit me. It put me on edge, which was useful when Ramsay came. Jaime's mouth twitched into a smile. Well, I suppose there's that. I'm happy to help you with my terrible lying in the future if the situation calls for it. Better yet, help me with the truth next time, Arya said. We are to be married, you know. I hear husbands and wives are supposed to be honest with each other. Where did you hear that? Jaime asked. Everyone from north to the south will tell you that the key to a happy marriage is lies. Well then we can't very well settle for being like everyone else, Arya retorted. Jaime laughed. Injured or not, she had not lost her sharp tongue. He was grateful that Ramsay Bolton had not taken it from her. When his laugh faded, a silence fell on the room. Jaime studied her, trying to make sense of where she was. Her tormentor was dead. He imagined she expected her fear and pain to die with him, but behind her eyes there was still fear, still pain. They lingered on her memories even though the one who caused them was dead. She tried to hide it, but Arya was quite fragile following this ordeal. He would expect nothing less. Only someone with a heart of stone would remain unmoved after such an experience, and Arya did not have a heart of stone, not even close. I'm fine, she said to fill the silence. Truly. I didn't ask, Jaime said. No, but you were asking with your eyes. Arya looked up at him. He's dead, there's no more reason for me to be afraid. No more reason, maybe, yet she was. He could hear it in her voice. Her strong front could fool most people perhaps, but he had grown quite familiar with this girl over the past several years. He knew when she was lying too. He didn't push her though. She had only just escaped death. Now wasn't the time to challenge her lies. Instead he picked up the bowl of broth and held it out. Good, then you should eat. That way we can keep you alive a little longer. Arya glared at him but did not reply. Jaime raised an eyebrow. If you're truly all right, eating shouldn't be a problem for you. That was all it took. A challenge. Arya grabbed the bowl of broth and took a sip from the bowl, glaring at him all the way. Jaime grinned. When reason failed to motivate Arya Stark, spite always succeeded. Chapter 57, Return of the Watch. The rider sent by Sansa brought good news and bad to Robb and his men. On one hand, Ramsay Bolton was dead, killed by Arya and her wolf. Though Robb had wished for Ramsay to die by his own hand, Arya was the only other who had a right to his life, and he had no doubt that she had made it painful for him in his last moments. The bad news was that she had acquired more injuries. She was likely to make a full recovery, but once again, Arya was confined to bed to heal from wounds she did not deserve. He should have posted guards at her door, or searched the keep from top to bottom before he left the walls. In his fury, he had not been thinking carefully, and Arya had once again suffered for it. Arya had done a great deal of suffering on Robb's behalf. Both of his sisters had. When he went to war to avenge his father, in the back of his mind, he knew that his sisters might be punished in his stead. But then Tywin Lannister had dangled Arya in front of him and demanded that he bend the knee if he did not want his sister to die. Tywin Lannister used Arya and taken her hostage, and then the Boltons kidnapped her, hoping to drive a knife further into Robb's heart. She had bled for him, not for anything she had done, merely because she shared his name and blood and he cared for her. It was nothing close to fair. When he returned to Winterfell, he went to see her at once. She was sitting up when he found her, a book in her lap. Her eyes were bright, though underlined by dark circles that spoke of a lack of sleep, and her face was still thin. Beneath her covers, he could not see what new wounds she may have earned, and he did not want to. Welcome home, Arya said without looking up from the book. How was the search? You know perfectly well it was a failure, Robb murmured. Ramsay Bolton never left. No, and he never will, Arya said. I heard it was you who made the decision not to tell me. Robb exhaled. Yes. Why? Her voice was calm, but that told him well enough that she was angry with him. For leaving her at the mercy of her once captor without any proper guard to protect her perhaps, or simply for not trusting her with the information, not trusting her to handle herself. Because I did not want you to worry, Robb said. You had enough on your mind already. I thought I could spare you from the news. And from him, she carefully marked and closed her book, finally looking up at him. When her hair fell back, he could see a gash across her cheek where he must have cut her, a bit higher, and he might have taken her eye. I didn't ask you to protect me, Robb. No, but it's my job, Robb said. I'm your brother. That's what brothers are supposed to do for their sisters. Protect them, and I haven't been able to. His jaw clenched. Not when Lord Tywin took you hostage, not when the Boltons kidnapped you, not from any of it, and I failed again. What use is being the Lord of Winterfell if I can't protect my family? I can't answer that, Arya murmured. Father would have been to tell you, I'm sure. Robb's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Well, he lost his brother Brandon Wright, and his sister Lyanna, and his mother, and his father. Arya picked at the bandage on her right hand. Everyone but Uncle Benjen. It's amazing that after all of that, he managed to be so warm to all of us. She looked up at him. People fail to protect those they love all of the time. No matter how powerful they are, it doesn't mean you're weak. The world is just cruel. Robb felt a rise of sadness through him. Yes, his father had lost so much in Robert's rebellion, and he had rarely spoken of it. Whenever he did, there was a haunted look in his eyes. Robb should have expected that one day he would have his own losses. The world was cruel, just as Arya said. You haven't lost me though, Arya said, and you haven't lost your children. There are still quite a few Starks left. Yes, Robb murmured. I'm sorry for not telling you he had escaped. Arya's mouth twitched into a small smile. And I'm sorry for not leaving you some of him to kill. Robb returned to the look. Ah, I'm sure you made it painful. You'll have to tell me about it sometimes when you're better. Gladly, Arya said. More good news arrived within days of Robb's return to Winterfell. The war for the Wall had been won by the Night's Watch and the Northern Volunteers. After Lord Commander Mormont was killed in action, and acting Lord Commander Alistair Throne was injured, Jon took control of the siege. They had fought off several waves of wildlings, though their numbers showed no sign of decreasing. So in a bid to gain some sort of ground, the Northern Volunteers were sent east to cross the wall elsewhere. Then they swooped in with cavalry from behind while the wildlings were resting. In the process, the captured Mance Raider and the wildlings on the other side had ceased their attacks. For now they were at a standstill, but so long as they had Mance captive, the wildlings had no one to control them. Jon was returning to Winterfell, along with the volunteer Northmen and other members of the Night's Watch, to help with the traitors who had elected to take the Black rather than face execution. The prisons of Winterfell would at last be emptied again. Of course there would be much to do during this transition. Robb would have to explain to the volunteers what had happened in full and bestow upon them their new lands and titles as a gift for their loyalty. He expected that the Umbers would be in for a difficult time, considering their own family turned against them and their liege lord. But at the very least, it was another step toward bringing the North stability. In the interim, Robb executed more traitors, many by his own hand, as was his father's way, and sent out small parties to search for any Bolton soldiers who had escaped the battle. He talked with his generals and decided which of the Stark loyalists would take what wards from the traitor families. The loyal Umbers could take in their own kin, of course, but who would be willing to take the children of the other families? The Glovers, Mormonts, the Reeds and Manderleys all opened up their homes, promising to treat the innocent well and raise them not to follow in their sire's footsteps. Robb knew some of those children would hate him. Even as they swore loyalty with their mouths, they would bear their resentment in their hearts and dream of vengeance one day. It was safer, perhaps, to kill them or risk another rebellion when they were grown. But he would not take the lives of innocents. His bannermen would not respect him for that. His father neither. When Jon arrived, he received him alone before they went to the Great Hall. They pulled each other into a tight embrace, one that only brothers come home from different wars could give. Either of them could have died and nearly did. Yet they had survived to see each other again. I'm sorry, Jon murmured. I took many of your soldiers at the worst possible time. Do not apologize, Robb said. It was a worthy cause. It would not matter if we killed the traitors if the wildling armies crossed the wall. He pulled back, clapping him on the shoulder. Father would be proud of you. I heard rumors that you were the commander toward the end. You kept the Night's Watch together in its darkest hour. So they say, Jon gave him a tired smile. He seemed to have aged in these past few months. I've only heard rumors from the wall, the rumors around Arya. He swallowed hard. Some say she died. Others say that Ramsay Bolton forced her to wed. Both are untrue, Robb said. She's alive, and she killed Ramsay Bolton herself just a fortnight ago. Jon released a breath, and everyone else, Bran, Sansa, the children. All alive, all well enough. Bran is short a few fingers, so is Arya. Everyone has their own injuries, Robb said. The children, well, Lyanna and Ben at least will forget this ever happened in a few years' time. Ned will only barely remember. John studied his face. He knew that Robb had not told him everything. There was another rumor about your wife. Robb glanced off to the wide, studying the torch on the wall, watching it flicker gently. That one is true. Robb, I'm sorry. He shook her head. Her murderer is dead, it's done with. No, it's not, John said. Of course it's not. Robb felt a wave of emotions rise up in him again. He only let himself feel them on a few scattered occasions when he was alone. But usually he was not alone. He was attending to the endless list of responsibilities, or comforting the children, or facing those who had betrayed him. He could not show weakness in any case. But here, alone with his brother, he felt it again, burning at his eyes. We have not even had time for a proper funeral, he thought. It's all such an awful disaster. John rested a hand on his shoulder, squeezing gently. Robb rested a hand over his, nodding once. He didn't trust himself to speak. After a moment of silence, John was kind enough to move on. So, you have recruits for the night's watch? Many, Robb said. If nothing else, this war will make sure that the wall once again has enough men to guard it. It will be welcome, John said. Mance may be captive and many of his wildlings surrendered, but there's still trouble in the north. Something made them unite and march on the wall in mass. Not just hatred for us, but fear. Fear of what? Robb asked. John hesitated. I'm not entirely sure, not yet, but there are growing rumors of dark things in the far north. Dark things like in old Nan's stories. Robb raised an eyebrow. Only not stories, John said. You know me, Robb, I'm not paranoid and I'm not a fool. If a few moons from now I send a letter to you with strange words, will you believe them? Robb didn't quite know how to respond. No, his brother wasn't a fool, and he wasn't the type to engage in strange gossip. They had both been laughing at old Nan's dark tales since they were old enough to dismiss them as stories. But he could not fathom facing another enemy so soon after this rebellion. The North needed time to heal. I'll believe you, he said at last, but all the same I hope you never send that letter. So do I, John murmured, with a voice as sombre as the statues in the crypts beneath them. Arya had not expected to see John again before she returned south, so his arrival in her room sent an unexpected burst of joy through her. He was tired and haggard by his own long war, and his messy hair had grown long enough that he had to keep it pulled back. But he was still John, and she had missed him dearly. Bran was sitting with her in her room when he arrived, and his whole demeanour brightened. In fact, he nearly dropped his book. John, we heard you might be coming home. Yes, only briefly, but I'm here. John leaned down to give him a kiss on his forehead. If Arya could, she might have leapt out of the bed to embrace him. Instead, she only shifted and grinned at the sight of him. Brief is enough. I worried it would be another 4 years between our visits. No, John crossed to her, embracing her very gently. Robb has many traitors to send to the wall, and Alistair Thorne assigned me to help escort them. That was kind of him, Arya said. Not kind, I would never call Thorne kind, especially not to me, John said. I think he just wanted to get me out of Castle Black. We will have to elect a new Lord Commander soon now that the fighting is done. There's some talk of nominating me. That would be a great honour, Bran said. I've read about the Lord Commanders. You might be the youngest ever if you were chosen. I'm not sure I want the role, John said. It is a great deal of responsibility. I may not like Thorne, but he has more experience than me. I am sure the Watch will choose him. He looked between Arya and Bran. And how are both of you, recovering? I heard about the fingers. Bran held up his right hand to show them missing. They don't hurt any longer, and I've already discovered how to write without them, though my handwriting is awful. Arya waved her right hand as well. Lucky for me they went for my right instead of my left. As Bran said, it's not hurting anymore. But Arya has far more injuries than that, Bran said. Arya shot him a glare. I'm fine. She's not, she's been in bed for a fortnight, Bran said, and for longer before that, because she has almost died twice in the past month. Arya let out a long sigh as she felt Jon's worried gaze turn on her. I'm fine. Maester Luwin says I'm nearly well enough to walk around again without aggravating my wounds. I'll have scars, but nothing permanent besides the fingers. She lifted her chin. Really, whatever you heard, they're being dramatic. Are they? Jon's mouth twitched. So you didn't kill Ramsay Bolton with your bare hands? No, I had a knife, 2 swords and a wolf, Arya said. All very helpful. So Needle did you some good then? Needle always does me good. I poked a hole in him just like you said. Jon smiled softly and mussed her hair, and Arya fought down a wave of grief at seeing that smile. She was lying to him like all of the others, pretending to be all right when she wasn't. Most of them saw through it because they had seen her in the direct aftermath of the attack. But Jon, simply because he had arrived on a good day, seemed to believe her. Somehow that was worse. She didn't like lying to him, but telling the truth was something she couldn't bear. "How long will you be here?" Bran asked, thankfully changing the subject. "Only a few days. There's much to do at the wall and these new recruits will be needed," Jon said. "Good," Bran said, "because when you leave I want you to take me as well." Jon was clearly taken aback by this, and Arya shot Bran a look. He hadn't mentioned this to her yet, and likely hadn't mentioned it to anyone. Their mother would never even hear of it. Why would he want to leave now? Then she remembered the conversation they had just before they were snatched up by the Boltons, a conversation about his dreams. "I've dreamed about a false spring," he had said, "of the warmth returning to Westeros, but only for a very short while. I've dreamed of a winter without end that will follow, and of the blue-eyed creatures that come with it." "Bran, the wall it's dangerous there," Jon said. "This is hardly the time for you to visit." "I won't go beyond the wall," Bran said. "I would just like to get away from Winterfell for a while. I have bad dreams here and I've always wanted to see the wall. Now that the war is over, I can." Liar, Arya thought. He remembered what he had told her in the Godswood just before they were taken. "The trees have been whispering to me, telling me to go north. I think I need to go beyond the wall." He did want to go north of the wall to investigate his dreams, but perhaps he knew that Jon would not say yes if he knew the nature of those dreams. Jon looked from Bran to Arya. He seemed to notice the concerned glint in her eyes, and he shook his head. "You're not telling me the whole truth, Bran. Why do you really want to go?" "I said the truth, or I say no right now and you will not budge me from it," Jon said. Bran exhaled, straightening in his chair. "I've been having strange dreams for a while now. It's hard to explain them all, but they are all urging me to go north. I think the answers are there." "What do you see in these dreams?" Jon asked. "Many things," Bran said, "but most of all I see the dead rising with blue eyes and marching on the wall." Arya expected Jon to dismiss these visions and assure Bran that the White Walkers were just old stories and legends, long buried by time. He didn't. Instead, his expression was unsettled, even afraid. "You've seen them too, then?" he asked. "Have you seen them?" Arya asked. "Yes," Jon said. "Not in my dreams, though. I have seen the dead rise with my own eyes, so have many others." Arya's eyes widened. She had not expected that at all. "So you understand the danger," Bran said. I understand it," Jon said. "So why would I let you go anywhere near it?" "Because I think I can help," Bran said. "I can't explain why or how, but I know in my bones that I can do something." He gripped the sides of his chair. "Please, Jon, I'm losing my mind sitting here day after day, reading and dreaming. If I can't find the truth of these things, they'll drive me mad. You need to take me to the wall. I don't know if it will help, but it's something, please." Jon lapsed into silence, staring grimly at the floor. Arya gripped her quilt tightly, looking from him to Bran. Then, "Your mother will never agree," Jon said. "I'll convince her," Bran said. "I promise." "They could just be dreams," Jon reminded him. Bran leaned forward in his seat. "I've dismissed my dreams as nothing for long enough. It could be nonsense, yes, but what if it's not?" Arya shivered as she remembered a dream of her own. A dream of looking out that window and seeing the slow creep of icy darkness across Westeros. A dream of dragons and ice and fire and blood. Yes, maybe it was nonsense. "But what if—" "I'll take you," Jon said at last, "but only if your mother agrees, and only if you promise to do exactly as I say." "I will," Bran said, and though it might have been a lie, this time Jon did not question him. Perhaps he did not think her mother would say yes, so it did not matter. Arya had no idea how Bran might convince her. But if he did, Bran and Jon would go to the wall, and Arya would soon be going south again. Sansa too, if this possible marriage with Willers was still to happen. "I suppose we'll all be leaving home again soon," Arya murmured, more to herself than to her brothers, but they heard her all the same. Jon smiled sadly, ruffling her hair again. "Yes, but one way or another we always find our way back." Arya smiled in return. Yes, they did.